Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, where we analyze and discuss Disney movies. Today, we're going to talk about the villains in fairy tales, and why not always what they seem. If you like this video, please click the like button down below and subscribe, so you won't miss out on any of our videos. If you grew up on fairy tales, then chances are you know the story of Cinderella. In it, she is forced by her stepmother and stepsisters to do menial work around the house until one day, she goes to the royal ball and is almost taken away from her newfound happiness by the clock, striking 12. But Cinderella's story is really all about her mean stepmother and stepsisters, who treat her horribly, just because they are jealous of her beauty. They're the classic villains of the story and we love to hate them. Well, maybe we do love to hate them, but it is important to note that their treatment of Cinderella isn't always consistent. For instance, if Lady Tremaine was truly upset over the fact that Cinderella was more beautiful than her daughters, then why didn't she take measures to improve their appearance? After all, there's no reason that they couldn't have been beautiful as well. So perhaps Lady Tremaine's cruel behavior wasn't simply rooted in jealousy, maybe it was something else entirely. Now, when we look at the original story of Cinderella, published by the Brothers Grimm, we see that Lady Tremaine isn't actually jealous of Cinderella's beauty at all. Instead, her main motivation for treating Cinderella poorly is to keep her from marrying a prince. That's because Lady Tremaine doesn't want her daughters to become jealous of Cinderella. And since she knows that Cinderella is beautiful and has a good heart, she thinks that she would make a wonderful princess. However, Lady Tremaine also wants her own daughters to become princesses. Therefore, she tries to stop Cinderella from going to the ball by cutting off her beautiful new dress and making her stay home and scrub the floor instead. Ultimately, though her plan fails and Cinderella attends the ball where she meets the prince, in the end, Lady Tremaine ends up looking foolish, not only because her plan failed, but also because Cinderella ends up marrying the prince. As you can see, the villain in Cinderella isn't motivated by jealousy. Rather, she acts out of a misguided sense of duty towards her daughters. Now, whether or not that makes her behavior any less cruel is up for debate. And I think that it probably doesn't, but it does offer some insight into her actions, and it makes her a much more complex character than she might initially seem. Another story with a surprisingly complex villain is The Little Mermaid. In it, Ariel is a mermaid princess who longs to become human. Despite her father, King Triton's warnings, she makes a deal with the sea witch Ursula to trade her voice for human legs. With the help of Ursula's magic, Ariel becomes human and soon meets a prince. However, before she can win his love, Ursula takes advantage of a loophole in their deal and takes Ariel's place in the form of a beautiful human woman. After trying to kill Prince Eric, Ursula is defeated when Ariel and her friends rescue him from her clutches. Now, obviously, Ursula is the villain of this story, but her role in it is much more significant than you might initially think. For starters, she is clearly a powerful sorceress, who has been imprisoned on a rock for unknown reasons. However, once the story begins, we learn that her true power comes from controlling other people, which is why she makes a deal with Ariel, by taking advantage of Ariel's emotions. Ursula is able to convince her to give up her most prized possession, her voice, all for the chance to become human. Then, once Ariel has made the transformation, Ursula is able to trick Prince Eric into thinking that she is the one who he really loves. In the end, it is clear that Ursula's greatest strength lies in her ability to manipulate those around her. She is ultimately defeated when Ariel is able to break free of her control and reclaim her voice. However, even in defeat, it is clear that Ursula is a formidable opponent and a powerful sorceress. Next, let's talk about another fairy tale villain who is actually much more complex than she seems, Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty. The story of Sleeping Beauty is one that most of us are familiar with. A princess is cursed by an evil fairy named Maleficent to die on her 16th birthday. However, another fairy lessens the curse, so that instead of dying, the princess will only fall into a deep sleep for 100 years. The princess is then locked away in a tower, where she is eventually awakened by the kiss of a handsome prince. But as you may have already guessed, Maleficent is not your typical fairy tale villain. In fact, when we look at the original story published by the Brothers Grimm, we see that she is actually a very minor character. In the Grimm version of the story, the princess is cursed by a wicked queen who is jealous of the fact that the king has chosen to marry someone else. Unlike Maleficent, the wicked queen is clearly an evil character who only seeks to cause harm to others. When we look at the Disney version of the story, however, we see that Maleficent is given much more depth. She is shown to be a powerful fairy who is capable of great love, but also great anger. It is clear that Maleficent has been mistreated in the past, which explains her bitterness and desire for revenge. However, even in her moments of anger, Maleficent is still a sympathetic character. For example, when the king refuses to allow her to attend the princess's christening, she is so hurt that she curses the child out of spite, but she doesn't actually wish for the child to die. This is a far cry from the wicked queen in the original story, who curses the princess out of pure jealousy. In the end, Maleficent is redeemed when she sacrifices herself to save Aurora from certain death. The final fairy tale villain that we will be discussing today is the evil queen from Snow White. Like the other villains that we have discussed, the evil queen is motivated by more than just a desire to be cruel. In fact, her main motivation is to remain the fairest of them all. Now, while this may seem like a shallow and vain goal, it is important to remember that the evil queen is not just a villain, but a character in a story. Like any good story, the character of the evil queen should have depth and complexity. However, one thing to keep in mind is that the original version of Snow White features a completely different kind of evil queen. In fact, the queen in the original story is not even Snow White's stepmother, but her biological mother. In the grim version of the story, the mother is driven to madness by her own vanity and desire to be the fairest of them all. She asks a magic mirror who is the fairest in the land, and when it tells her that it is Snow White, she orders her to be killed. Unlike the Disney version of the character, the evil queen in the original story is not motivated by love or loyalty to anyone. Instead, she is driven by her own selfish desires. Now, the Disney version of the story changes this and makes the evil queen Snow White's stepmother, which makes her actions much more complex. You see, now, the evil queen is motivated by her love for Snow White's father. Because of this, she is willing to do anything to keep him from marrying another woman. When the magic mirror tells her that Snow White is now the fairest in the land, the evil queen is so jealous that she decides to get rid of her stepdaughter. Clearly, the evil queen's actions are now driven by her own personal feelings of loss and jealousy. As a result, she is a much more complex character than she might initially seem. So there you have it. For fairy tale villains who are actually more complex than you might think, each of these characters is motivated by more than just a desire to be evil, which makes them all the more fascinating. So next time you watch one of these classic stories, keep an eye out for the subtle clues that reveal the true depths of these characters. And who knows, you might just be surprised at what you find. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave us a like and subscribe so you never miss an upload. Until next time everyone, take care and thanks for watching.